So the other day we were talking about birthdays, and I realized that my son is actually going to be reaching the age that I was when my mom died. And through that, I also realized that I've lived longer without her than I have with her. And it got me thinking about something that I hadn't really connected before. It was the time that I remember when I was little that I had a concussion, and I gave my mom quite a scare. And a few years ago, my son gave me, that same kind of scare, which leads me to, do we learn how to love because we witness it first? Welcome back to Soulful Wanderings, the space where we search for meaning in everyday life and honor the lessons that help us grow. I'm Heather and I'm your host. And before we get started, we would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast. And you can also head over to our socials and follow us there. And of course, all that information will be in the show notes. Let me see if I can start at somewhat the beginning. And I think I've told y'all this story before, or at least part of it. I really can't remember what part we've talked about. But anyway, so we lived on a dairy farm when I was a kid. I think I was about 7 or so when we moved from there. So I was pretty young. So a lot of my memories are somewhat vague. You know, they're little snippets kind of. But I may never forget the time that I gave myself a concussion. I was running up the sidewalk to the house. I don't know, maybe my brother was there, my mom. I don't remember why, but so I ran up the sidewalk and I tripped and I smacked my head on the concrete. And I'm wondering if I even knocked myself out a little bit. I'm just wondering because I at least was loopy, I think, because they took me to the emergency room. Evidently, it was, immediately that evident that, okay, we need to go see to this. And this is the part I feel like I've shared. One thing I remember from that incident was I threw up right outside the doors of the hospital. And I remember my mom being mortified because I made a mess and it's gross. But that was also indicative that she had made the right decision to take me in. So I did indeed have a concussion, and I don't remember the finer details of doctors or tests or really anything like that. But I remember the night after. I remember I wasn't supposed to sleep for something like 24 hours, I think is what it is when you have a concussion. And the thing I remember is the snippets of mom entertaining me. You know, she stayed with me, watching me. She was making sure that I was safe and I did what I needed to do. And of course, now that I have a child and kind of understand that age, I'm sure it was quite nerve-wracking and exhausting to keep me awake, at such a young age for that long. But I remember that neither of us slept because the last thing she would do was let something happen to one of her babies. Now, of course, as a kid, I don't think I really understood it. I remember having a horrible headache and just being so tired. And I remember at first I was scared because there were moments where I saw this concern on her face. And of course I heard them talking about, she has to do this. And they were being very adamant about what I needed to do. And apparently it could be quite serious if I did not. So it was kind of scaring me that, okay, wait a minute, what's going on, And like I said, I remember that I would see that concern on mom's face. So I knew something was wrong, but she would kind of shake it off really quickly, right? And the truth is, I remember feeling like as long as she was there, that I was fine. I knew she would handle it, that she would watch and she would make sure that I was okay. But again, as a kid, I don't know that you fully get it. You can't fully grasp the situation of what's going on until the day you're the one that's sitting in the chair. So I think my son, I think he was around 19, He had graduated high school, but he was still living at home. And we often are in bed early because we get up fairly early to go to work. But my phone went off with a text, and it's probably near midnight. Of course, I was a little bit startled, kind of struggling to, focus your eyes in the middle of the night. And it was my son, and he said he needed us, that he couldn't stand up. So I immediately, wake my husband up, bolted into his room, and we found him. He was dizzy, and his hands and feet, starting at his wrist and then on his feet, starting at his ankle, they were so white that you couldn't imagine there was any blood in them at all. They were so white. So we thought, okay, let's check his blood pressure. Something just seems off. It's probably, it just felt like it was kind of heart related or something. So I have a blood pressure cuff that I keep around to check my own blood pressure. So we grabbed it, put it on as quickly as we could. And the reading, I don't remember the exact, but I think it was something, it was like 198 over 174. And I remember all I could think was, I'm going to watch my 19-year-old have a stroke right in front of me. It was just an immediate, oh my God. So I kind of quickly processed and realized, we need to get him somewhere. Something's going on. So I told my husband, I said, look, get him dressed. And I went to do the same. Got him in the car, put the flashers on, headed to the ER. And the truth is, I had kind of been creating this little plan in my head that if something got worse, or he passed out, or, God forbid, he truly stroke out or something on the way, that, I was going to basically be prepared to call 911, let them know that we were en route, and hopefully maybe an ambulance could meet us or something like that. And it was, it's such a terrifying thought that you're processing all of this. What am I going to do if this happens? But I was also trying really hard to stay calm for him, because I knew that if I was panicking and freaked out, that he would panic. He was already panicked. But I knew that if I could stay calm, that it would help him stay calm. But of course, you've got all the what ifs running through your mind, and internally I'm in a full-blown panic, right? What if we couldn't get him there in time? What if they couldn't see him quickly? But I kind of refused to let my mind go to that worst case scenario. But the panic was still there. It was, until I knew what was going on, I don't think that was going anywhere. So thankfully the hospital, I guess, recognized the possibility of the severity of a 19-year-old with a stroke level blood pressure. As I was checking him in, I remember her asking me, what was going on. So I told her, and when I said the numbers, she's like, what were the numbers again? And this look, her face changed when I said the numbers, and she goes, okay. So anyway, they got him back pretty quickly. There were tests, there were blood tests, there were scans. They were very thorough. But I guess you have to be when none of the usual suspects were the culprit. Nothing was showing up. I sat, I hovered, watched. I held that little weird green baggy thing that they give you so that he could throw up. Then I'd get a new one. I wanted to text my husband so bad with every update, but the whole point of me going, only one of us going, was so that he could rest and, actually go to work the next day. So instead I put my phone away and I just focused. I advocated for him. I tried to keep him calm, but I never left him. By early the next morning, we were in the annex. That's that area between the ER and being admitted. And the word admitted had been floated, but they really just didn't know yet. There were a couple of more tests that they wanted to run. And of course, all of this was taking time because they would draw the blood and test it, but they had to wait a certain amount of time, I think, to see if whatever they were looking for happened in the blood. So it was just taking time. So they would draw blood, wait, draw blood, wait. It was just this all night thing, and we still didn't know where we were on what was going on. Now, fairly early on in this whole process, they had given him something for nausea. I can't think of the name of that. Zofran, is that it? And anybody that's had that, it makes you super sleepy. So he was kind of in and out of sleep all night. If they weren't in drawing blood or doing something like that, he would fall asleep. So as the night would wear on, there would be these moments of quiet. It was between the blood draws and the trips to scans, and I wanted so bad to close my eyes. In fact, more than once, I had to really, really fight not to. But even with all the worry, my body was revolting. It wanted to sleep. But still, I sat, I hovered, I watched him sleep, I stroked his hair. I held back tears that I promised myself I wouldn't let him see so that he wouldn't worry. So as morning came, I called work, let them know. Of course, there's do what you need to do. Called my husband, brought him up to date on what was happening. He brought me some snacks. We hadn't eaten or anything all night, and my laptop so that I could try to get some work done while my son was sleeping. Eventually, he woke up, and of course, he was hungry because we hadn't eaten in a while. So I went to get his food in the cafeteria, and on the way back down the hall, the doctor actually recognized me, and stopped me. Hey, and said our name, hey, are you his mom? Yes. And that the last test had come back negative. So they were going to be releasing us soon. So there was relief in that moment, but not completely, because to this day, we don't know what happened to him. We have no idea what caused it. It's never happened again. And that's been a few years, I think. But we don't know. It was after COVID. Maybe something had triggered after he had COVID. Don't really know. What I do know is that I would have stayed there as long as it took for them to run tests and figure out what was going on, because there was really nothing that could have stopped me from getting him help. And of course, when we talk about it now, he says he really doesn't remember much of the night. So all this chaos and all these things that were going on and just all this craziness. He's, yeah, I really don't remember that. The meds had made him pretty loopy. But he has a few moments out of that night that he can recall. But like I said, a lot of it is pretty sketchy for him. But me, I can recall pretty much all of the moments. And somewhere sitting there in the middle of the night, I had this thought. I wondered if this is how Mom had felt with me. Had she been in an internal panic like I had? Had she hidden tears? Had she watched and waited and stroked my hair because that's all she could offer to soothe me? It dawned on me that we learn to love by how we are loved. Caregiving, that's really not something you teach. It's something that's modeled. And sometimes we don't even fully recognize it until we're in the same seat. And now that I've lived more of my life without her than with her, somehow in that moment, she was right there. I have so much appreciation for my mom and the way she loved us, especially now that I'm a mom myself and see some of those same things. Just the way she modeled it every day was so amazing. I appreciate how I learned to have that same depth of love without even realizing what I was learning. It's It's a part of my conditioning that I'm actually grateful for. It's a part of her I carry with me. And I didn't even realize it until I was in the chair. I wonder how many things we carry, not just in memory, but in the way we love, in the way we show up, in the way we choose to stay. Not because we were told, but because we felt them first.